Well, hi there. Welcome to Comic Talk.
Hi there.
Well, hello. I'm Joshua.
I'm good old Drew.
That's great. This is Comic Talk, and we're going to be talking about comics. On this issue today, we're talking about internet piracy, how it relates to comic books.
And I'm tell you about them internet pirates. They done stole some of my property.
I'll stop talking like that. Today we're going to talk about piracy and how it relates to comic books. This is something that I think is really important going forward as we move more and more towards digital comics and digital reading. I think this is a conversation we're going to hear more and more. We've seen this play out over music, like in the late 90s. It seeped over into film. And now we're starting to see people really complain about it in comics as well. So it seems like something worth talking about.
Sure.
Do you have any opening thoughts before I kind of go on my own diatribe here?
Opening thoughts. Well, I guess most of my thoughts about piracy would be more about music, but I think they can be likened to one another. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, on the whole music thing, like my thoughts are, it's a problem only because live performance is kind of a problem now. I mean, even like in our shitty city in the Midwest, like people performing like the same gigs now that they did back in the 80s. Like in the 80s, they were making like the same dollar amount of money. So flash forward, like 20 or 30 years, like that money just doesn't go as far. And, like that side of things hasn't caught up. And if it had, if somebody downloaded your album, like, big fucking deal, I mean, if you're like a working musician and you're out there, like, playing and putting out shit regularly, like, you want people to just have your shit because the more likely they are to have your shit, the more they are likely to give you money when they have a chance to. Mm-hmm. So I would say the same kind of thing about comics. I don't see any problem. Well, this is a little bit of a divergence, but if you're going to download some shit that came out like 20, 30 years ago, like it's a big fucking deal. Like not a dollar of that even has a chance to go to anybody that was responsible in the creation or production of that comic, like period. And people that, or comics that are coming out right now, if somebody wants to download like the first trade of Batman, Robin Eternal, then, awesome. If that means that they're going to go out and they're caught up on the series and they can go out and start buying them, like that's better. Like the companies should want that.
Right.
But as far as just, I mean, if you don't buy them ever at all, like that's a little bit shady in my opinion.
Right. I agree. I think a lot of people see it as very black and white. They say pirating comics is illegal. It's bad because you're not paying for it, right? You're just getting something for free that's supposed to cost money. Mm-hmm. And although I understand sort of the emotional argument that comes from, I don't think that really truly represents reality. Because like you said, first of all, there's used, right? If a comic came out 20 years ago and it hasn't been in print for 20 years, then if you go out and buy it on eBay used, you're not giving any money to the creative team. You're not giving, if you buy...
At that point, you're supporting the collecting industry.
Right. You're supporting somebody else who's selling you someone else's work that they purchased at one at a time. There's nothing illegal about it because, you own a thing, you can sell it to somebody else and they can own the thing. Like it's a physical product. Sure. But if the moral and ethical argument is you should pay for the entertainment that you take in, right? That's generally the concept. That is the moral or ethical argument here, that if I'm reading your comic book, you put work into it, thus I should pay you for the work that you put into it. But the used market automatically
negates that.
Negates it. It throws a monkey wrench in this whole concept. So first of all, if you're somebody who's comfortable going out and buying a used comic off of eBay or off of, my comic shop or one of these places, or even just clicking used on Amazon and buying, You see articles all the time, oh, $3 trades on Amazon that you can buy used. If you're somebody who's okay with that, you need to think very carefully about how you feel about piracy, because morally and ethically, you are not contributing to the creators of that comic, the publishers of it, in any way. You're just giving money to somebody else who already bought it themselves. Sure. So in that way, really, you're giving money to pirate the comic. You're paying to pirate from a third person is honestly the way I see it.
Sure.
At the same time, I don't feel like there's anything wrong with that. I think that's perfectly morally and ethically fine. But
some
for
people
me,
just like things, like they want to have like the physical book, and
right.
I mean, you could make the argument like, yeah, but you can let somebody borrow the physical book. It's like, yeah, but you can fucking send those scans to like everybody that you know,
right?
And let everybody borrow it simultaneously. So if you're trying to make that argument, really,
right.
I mean, piracy is kind of the way to go.
Right. It's the better version
right.
of borrowing,
right.
And it's also not all that different from the library.
No.
You go to the library, you check something out, you take it back, somebody else checks it out, they take it back, and
you don't give the information back when you return the book.
Right, you've already brought it in, like you're done.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a wider argument here, or a wider discussion to have about, like you said, Batman and Robin Eternal, which we recently, just last week, did a review on. We talked about it. That is a series that's coming out every week, and there is no way for somebody who isn't reading digitally, but then that's the issue because we are talking about digitally, to go back and get those. So somebody could go and pay digitally to read it. But there's an argument to be made that a person who wants to start reading the floppies and paying to get the physical product, that if they have that option to pirate, read, say, the first 6 or 7, get to where they can go buy them, that's a win for DC. DC is making money. They would not have sold the comics that came from that.
And more so, they don't make less money either way. Like, my comic shop makes a little bit less money because they're not selling used comics, whatever. But that doesn't affect DC.
Right.
Right.
There is, however, I do completely agree that the person who just pirates everything they read, that's not so great. To me, that's morally or ethically gray at the best. I even understand the argument that anything digital, if you produce something and make it digital, then you are in a way advocating piracy. You're creating a product that will be pirated because that's the nature of the industry. If in Alaska it was illegal to make your own ice, it would be silly to think people would just not make ice. They're still going to do it, right? So making that law doesn't automatically make people ethically wrong for making their own ice instead of paying for it when it's so easy to make, right?
Sure.
And it's kind of the same argument. Like, you can't just expect people not to pirate. So if you go into an industry where you're creating digital products, you should understand that industry is an industry in which people will pirate your work and trade it and see it as information. There are a lot of people out there who do not feel like piracy is unethical in any way. And whether or not you and I agree or disagree with that, they disagree. They think that it's okay. And you need to understand that. And that's something growing. Like the younger generations, younger than us, they really feel that way a lot. They say, if it's on the internet, that's on you.
Yeah.
Like, you
it's
put it there.
It's not your fault. It's not my fault that it's on the internet.
Right.
And somebody else uploaded it to this thing. Like,
yeah, you put it there. You made a digital thing, so of course I can get it for free. Like, what did you expect, dummy?
Yeah.
So I think to some degree you have to understand that that's there. I'm not so sure I agree with that completely, because I do, obviously, is a big fan of comics because we're here doing this show, right? I think it's important to support these people with the money that you have available to support it.
Definitely, because, if Mark Waid had to have a second job, like, we wouldn't have half the shit that we have,
Right.
Or at some point, he would probably just stop writing because he's like, look, I really love doing this, but I'm not making any fucking money doing it. Like, he gets to a point in his life where he has, like, a wife and kids and shit, and he's got to support them. Like, maybe it's time to stop drawing comics and, grow up and get a real job. Like, if you are somebody that aspires to not have a shitty, slavish existence, you should support others in their endeavor to do the same. And I think I mean, this is directly that. This is literature plus artwork.
Right. And it's not easy to make a living writing or drawing pretty pictures. Like,
No, it's not.
and it is hard work. Especially on the artistic side, the artists, they 8 to 5, every day drawing these comics. It's not some screw around side venture. It is a full-time job for them to do that. Here, though, I think is where I might start losing some people here in my opinion of how this works. And that is that I think realistically moving forward, we have to start seeing media as something more and more that people choose how much they're willing to invest into a certain area of media. For example, we do have things like Netflix, right, where people, they pay their $15 a month and then they have a big selection of things that they can watch, right? They're not paying piecemeal thing by thing. We have things like Marvel Unlimited, which is beginning to get there, where it's 6 months behind, but you can read everything from Marvel for I think $10 a month.
Yep.
But larger than that, I do see room for this idea that people can only spend so much money on a particular kind of media, right? People make their own budgets in their life.
Yeah.
My budget for comics is somewhere in the realm of $100 to $150 a month, right? Which is probably quite a bit higher than a lot of people's other budgets, and probably quite a bit lower than a certain percentage of our viewership. And regardless of how much I read, if I read just the comics I buy, or if I read the comics I buy and pirate that many more, no matter what,
you're going to be spending the same amount.
That's the amount of money that I can pump into the industry. I don't have more money than that to give.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I mean, going back to, people like pirating your songs, like you want them to have that. It's the same thing. Like the more your fans are engaged in your shit, the more fanish they're going to be, I mean, like if somebody's, you can only spend like this much on comics every month, but you're just like reading them constantly, like you just go home and you just fucking like read comics every day, then when some big effort of the industry comes out, like you can count on those people to support it. Like those people are in it for the long stretch, and I don't think that's something to be discounted. I mean, those are your repeat customers. Those are people that are always going to be there. Like even if they steal half the shit and like only pay for half, like you can fucking count on them paying for that half, like as long as you're putting shit out, and that's awesome.
Right. And to me, I think the important part there is if I have a pull list that is, say, as it is now, about 25 issues, give or take, right? That's all I can have. It's not like I can just add 10 more books to that pull list to see if I like them.
Yeah.
Right? So I may or may not go out there and pirate some things and read them. I'll read issue number 1. You read issue number 2. You and me will discuss them, right? These kind of things happen. And that pull list changes, right? You say, well, you know what? This thing that I'm not paying for deserves my money. And so what do? You go out and you start buying that thing.
Instead.
And you say, this other thing that I was reading, I don't like it that much, so I'm going to stop reading it. And it loses your money. So I think piracy in that realm, when you're using it as kind of a try before you buy sort of situation.
Yeah, first hit's always free, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's completely reasonable, and if not entirely legal, it is certainly, I think, morally and ethically okay. I don't feel like there's anything morally or ethically wrong with following that route. Knowing that you're out there looking for things for people to give your money to. You're searching for someone to pay.
Right. And again, looping it back to before, like, gigs they're not paying any more than they were back in the 80s. Comics cost more than they did fucking back in the 80s.
Right.
So they do have kind of control over that aspect of it. Like, I find it hard to believe that, if they can put out a $2.99 book that's got like some good length to it and it's got like a high quality ink and some good quality paper and they're still like making money off of it, like I find it hard to believe that they're hurting.
Right. Right. And if they are, I don't think it's fair to blame piracy either.
Right.
And there's another thing that I'd like to bring up for that, and that's
like if your margins are high enough to where you can't account for that, then fucking what are you doing? You know?
right. One of the other interesting things that I've seen is there's been a few studies that they've done with music, because music's been pirated the longest.
Sure.
There's been multiple studies now that show that people who pirate music consistently spend more money on music, right? So the more engulfed or the more deeply you are into a particular medium, the more likely you are to also pirate that work, because you just can't get enough of it, right?
Right. Yeah.
You're the biggest fan. It's not. There are some people who pirate who are just testing the waters. They're not big comics people, but in my experience, the people who pirate the most are the hugest comic fans. They're the people with the basements full of comics. They're the people with comic books stuff on the walls, and the animated figures and or the statues. Sorry, they're the people that are heavily invested in it and are spending a lot of money on the industry. So it seems silly to think that it's those people that are the problem, right? The people that are pirating are the problem for the industry. No, the people that are pirating are generally the people spending the most money on the industry already. So,
and again, that whole engagement thing, and it comes back to personality types. If you're the type of person that's going to get super into something, if somehow you can't satiate that need anymore, like you're going to go fucking find something else. Like you're going to go turn into like a Netflix junkie and watch every season of Lost, for a while, and then go binge watch something else, instead of reading comics. And then, the comic book industry isn't making any money if you're reading or watching fucking Lost every day.
Right, right. And I think the last thing I'd like to say is I'd like to address what I know is going to be the first response in the comics, in the comments below, which is going to be, if you can't afford it, don't read it, right? Which, at first glance, is a reasonable statement to make, I think. If you can't afford it, then why are you reading it? Well, the way I see it is, because you can.
Yeah. Right?
Like, what's the difference in the end for DC Comics? Let's just use DC Comics as an example. If I buy nothing from DC Comics, they get $0. If I pirate 5 books from DC Comics, they get $0. Right? So where's the greater than or better than symbol at? It's not. It's an equal symbol. It's $0 and $0.
It comes back to that thing, like if you can afford to spend $0, then they're the same. And I think people get tied up in that thing, like, well, of course it's only a $3 book. Just get $3 out of the couch and go fucking buy the book. But again, that just takes us to the last one, where it's like, I've already spent fucking $30 on comics, this week.
Right.
So just let me have these fucking 2 to see if I like them more than something I'm already reading.
Right. And the $30 is all I'm going to spend.
Yeah.
Like, they got the $30, so it's either $30 plus 0 more.
This way.
And I don't read anything else. Or it's $30 plus 0, and I read some things and may become a fan of that new thing. Mm-hmm. So if you're like a utilitarian, ethical person, right? Your ethics. I know that's a popular ethical system now, especially for like our demographic, right? People who say, well, the greatest need or the most positive is the morally or ethically superior view. Well, when it comes to piracy, from the DC side or the comic book publisher side, it's 0 and 0. It's a net 0.
Yeah. So
the only positive, the only utilitarian side of it is the other side, the consumer side. Mm-hmm. So if me, the consumer, spends $30 and I get 10 books, or I spend $30 and get as many books as I want, well, obviously $30 and get as many books as I want, and DC gets $30 either way is the utilitarian, positive, moral, or ethical decision. So,
and really, I mean, if you're checking shit on your own, that means that they don't have to put previews in the back of their book. So,
that's right. Saves them money, saves them printing. Yeah. But this all hinges on the idea that the person pirating is a consumer.
Yeah.
Is a person actually going out there and spending their money on comics and is intending to support the creators that they love. If your intention isn't to support the creators you love, you're morally bankrupt, in my opinion. You don't deserve to pirate because you're just ripping people off. It's not in best intention. You're not trying to be morally or ethically good, right? You're not trying to do the right thing. My argument is just that you can pirate morally and ethically with the intention to do good and benefit everyone.
Sure. It's not all bad.
It's not all bad, so quit being a dick about it to people and let them pirate things if they're willing to spend money. That's kind of what it comes down to, in my opinion.
And I think it's almost become necessary to a point just because of the way that society is kind of moved. Like, you know, we have all this technology and interconnectedness, you know, but people don't get out and, like, talk to each other as much. You know, like, if it was 20 years ago, like, I hate to say it, but we would both probably have, like, a good 10 or so friends, you know, that we could, like, borrow comics from and talk comics with and shit, you know. Such isn't really the case anymore. So this is that, you know.
Right, yeah, and that's another thing, man, is you and I borrow comics from each other all the time. That is the same.
Yeah.
You know, I'm reading the comic and I didn't pay for it. You paid for it once, I read it for free. So something we do, I'll straight up say this, something we do all the time for this show is we'll buy one copy of something, you'll read the physical, and I'll pirate it and read the digital version. If anybody thinks that there's anything wrong with that, fuck them. You know what I mean? Like, for real, fuck you if you think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Not to mention that we come and we support it, you know. Like,
right, but I bought it. Like, I paid for it, and then I pirate it. Like, I do that a lot. I pirate things I buy all the time.
Yeah. I think that's actually one of the legal things that you can do. Like, if you own the digital copy, you can download it as many times as you want.
Not really.
It isn't?
No.
Oh, like, I thought that was the way it worked.
If you own the digital copy, you can get the digital copy from the same source. But if you own, like, the physical, you can't download it digitally. That's still piracy and considered theft.
So stupid.
Right? It's idiotic, but I do it, and I don't think anybody out there would have a problem with it. I have a hard time believing even the creators would care.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we bought your book, man. I just wanted to read it this other way instead. So, you know, ultimately, that's really my feeling on it. It just comes down to if you're trying to be morally correct, if you're trying to support who you love.
Right.
And we're also seeing people now who are starting to experiment with digital, like Brian K. Vaughan's Private Eye. He did a digital version of it that came out first, and it was pay what you want. I paid $0 for Private Eye and read it, and it was really cool, and it's out in hardcover now. He released it in hardcover, and I will probably, in the next few months, go out and buy the hardcover version. I'll probably spend $20-$30 for it because it was really cool. And the hardcover is this really cool side one because the whole thing was done digitally, so you could read it on a tablet or your screen.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So yeah.
Right? So it's all
sideways.
16 by 9.
Yeah.
So the binding's on the top. It looks really cool. I'll probably go buy it just because it's actually unique and neat.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's a really nice hardcover because you didn't have to spend any money on singles. So I'll probably go pick it up, even though I paid nothing for it, which he allowed. I didn't pirate it. He put it out there trying to entice people to come pay him for it, and it looks like it's working.
Yeah. Radiohead did the same thing with it in Rainbow's album.
Right.
And yeah, they made a ton of money off of it.
Yeah, they made a shitload of money on it. Yeah. So I think people embrace this more and more and embrace the idea of digital information, and but it's a weird time for it.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about it? Will any of you guys fess up to doing any pirating?
How do you cope with this thing where we live in a world with, like, unlimited access to people's creative endeavors, but, like, everybody's broke as shit because the economy sucks?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah, tell us about it. And just in general, like, what's your opinion of piracy? Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line for other people? If you don't do it, is there anybody that you think is okay? Like, how about the broke college student, right? The guy who just has $0. We were there once. You were there. I was there. I think we were there around the same time.
Probably, yeah.
What about those guys that they have no money to spend? Would you rather them stay a fan of things and keep up with it so when they have money they can spend it? Or would you rather
Get drunk and talk about Spider-Man at parties?
Right.
Maybe convert somebody.
Right. Or even just 5 years later when they get their doctorate and go out and start making money, and they start buying comics again because they were able to keep up with it. How do you feel about that kind of thing? That was me.
Yeah.
I did a lot of pirating in my youth, when it was first a thing 5-7 years ago. I pretty much pirated everything for a year or two because I was super broke, man, like ramen noodles kind of thing. But it's how I passed time. I would just sit and read comics on my cheap little tablet I had bought. You know, I spent $150 on a tablet, and then I could just read all the comics I wanted for a couple years. But in the long run, now, you know, I spend thousands of dollars a year on comics because of it. So
there you go.
It paid off, you know. So what are your thoughts? We're rambling now, so
Facebook, Twitter.
you guys ramble for a little bit down below.
Yeah.
Thanks.